Okay, at this time, the purpose of this meeting is for a presentation from BLDD. So we'll turn it over to you, Sam.
Very good. Good evening. I'm glad to see you again after a very brief time between our last visit. We have a short agenda. We're going to briefly review the information that we heard, summarize it in our meeting on Monday. That feedback was incredibly productive, as you're going to see tonight. We have some very nice things to show you. Next thing we'll do is show you the revised options and the differences between the various options, and then the last item is to just get your feedback about what you like and thoughts about next steps. So with that, Rachel has handed out a summary of the feedback. The first two charts are the first two questions that were asked of the group, and the significance of each is as follows. What learning activities allow children to thrive? What you saw is that almost all of the groups selected all of the activities, reflecting what we've heard throughout the planning process, that we want to have a variety of activities in this facility. What follows then, logically, is what kind of spaces are needed for these, and with the exception of small cubicles with desks, which may be more common when I was going through school, everything else was an important activity setting that would allow for the various activities to take place. I'd like to ask Rachel now to complete a review of the information we heard.
Thank you. Okay, so if you will turn then to the page that's titled Small Group Work Activity 1 Results. You'll see a little bit of pink there in the bottom. So basically what we did was we took all the comments that were made in those work activities, we compiled them all, put them all together, and then we looked for common themes among them. So if you look down at the very bottom of it, you see in the kind of salmon color that common themes to what challenges do you see in the current environment, no climate control, no flexibility, lack of technology, those sorts of things. Those are the same types of things that we have heard throughout the entire process from all the feedback that we've received. And then what are the top 3 things that should be addressed by this project? Technology, spaces for different types of environments, pride in environment, security, flexibility. So that was work activity 1. And then in work activity 2, we asked everyone to rank the options in the order of their preference. And you'll see how those ranked. A was up there pretty close to B, but B was obviously in the lead as far as the preferences go. All right, and then on to the narratives from small group work activity number 2. Again, we compiled all of the comments that were made, and then we looked for common themes. So you have one page for each of the options that were presented. On option A2, we asked for the pros and cons of each, and then we asked for suggested improvements. You'll notice the pros and cons, again, they correlate with the things that we've talked about, the feedback that we've gotten in the past. So the pros were that teams are together, that collaboration areas, small group work areas, shared spaces. The costs were a pro, 6th grade would be separate, that sort of thing. And then the cons were that there was no auditorium. There was they didn't care for the location of the band, the location of the electives, and there was a concern about the entrance. And suggested improvements were more use of the courtyard. In option A, we saw some pros. Auditorium, the new gym and the location of the gym were a pro. Collaboration areas were a pro. The cons were the location and isolation of special education. There was concern about the auditorium and for the costs. And then making the auditorium a flexible space was a suggested improvement. On option B, the pros were hands-on spaces. The 6th grade edition was well liked. The location of the music programs and having all the fine arts programs together. The cons were, again, no auditorium, the location of the band and choir areas, and the costs. And then another suggested improvement, the relocation of the band and the choir areas. And in option C, the pros were the science area, the auditorium. The cons were costs, all of the grades and their locations for sciences. The size of the kitchen, a lot of open space and bus drop-off, and the suggested improvements were the relocation of the info center. And we took all of that, as we did with all of the feedback that we've received, and incorporated that into the plans that we're going to talk about here in just a moment.
Thanks, Rachel. So Debbie, could we pull up option A? What I'd like to do now is just review the revisions, and I'm going to start by telling you that everything you see tonight is within the program budget. Everything is within the program square footage. Okay? So what we've done is we've taken the revisions and we've taken those common suggestions and we've applied them across every one of these concepts. So let me tell you about the one thing that really set the solution in motion, that solved all of the issues. While Steve, my partner, and the superintendent and I were talking Monday night, the superintendent wasn't entirely enamored with all of the solutions. And one of the things he noted was that we've got to be able to find a better way to repurpose that gym. Is there a better way? Is there a way that it can provide some of the services needed for the student commons, for instance? And with that suggestion, the eventual solution was pretty much born. We have 3 projects that we have completed where we have combined elements of a performance venue, a student commons, and even an information commons. 2 of them you can see they are being built. The one that's the most similar is actually being constructed as we speak. So I'm going to use this laser pointer, and hopefully I haven't had too much coffee. It's quite a distance. All right. So here's what you see. Yeah, sorry, Steve. All right. So this is the existing gym right now. And in all of the concepts, we're proposing repurposing it, where the stage is exactly where the stage is now, although the stage will be reconstructed. 1/2 of the area, approximately, will become fixed seating. That's a small venue for 150 to 175 students. The area right between, and we have another drawing that will explain this, becomes a flexible area. Superintendent Potasic talked about the movable bleachers with theater seating at Eisenhower High School. That's what goes in here, except they stack right here and they move backwards. So what can happen is you can have a small venue for a small group, 150 to 175, or you can open those telescoping bleachers and get a group of about 450, probably. That allows great flexibility. So when those bleachers are closed, you have one space here, you can have another space here to do testing or multiple activities, and then you have a third space here. Now, these 2 spaces combine to become the student commons. We're going to work within the constraints of the existing construction. You've got 3 columns right in here that will need to remain. We don't want to take out the structure if we don't have to. And there will be something like nice operating overhead doors that will open up. And then this becomes the entire student commons. You serve probably 250 to 275 students in that area. It's the heart of the building. Kitchen is right here. So this becomes a pretty wonderful space, not unlike what you saw in Decatur Eisenhower. Completing this design, and also incredibly important to the overall solution, is moving the media center here. Again, there are so many, these 3 spaces all have an assembly component, and rather than building 3 separate assembly components, let's build it once, and let's let it be multiple use. What I think is incredibly important about this is that currently, much of the traffic, I'm going to imagine, or let's just say a significant amount of the traffic comes to the current media center because of its location of computer labs. You know, the trend is that instead of taking students to technology, the trend is taking technology to students. And once that trend has completed, you're in the process of it, once that trend is completed, I think this location will damage the effectiveness of the media center. I think moving it here, combining it with this space, creates a vibrant redefinition and reestablishes its importance within the building. With that solution, then, we can afford to build a standalone new gym to seat 750 students. It can be divided so you have 2 practice cross courts. So this allowed the rest of the solutions to move forward. So you're going to see that that is standard among all 3 of the ideas. All 3 of the ideas have this in common. Now, let's start talking about what's, yes.
Do you want questions during, or would you rather us hold them?
Go ahead, as you're thinking of.
Just a quick question
Yeah.
on the gym. Since it's standard, it applies to all of them, what is the seating capacity approximately?
About 750.
About 750?
Yeah, it's about the student population.
Okay.
It seemed like a reasonable place to start. Okay, so what's unique about this is we've created fine arts all in the same location. So we've relocated special ed to be adjacent to the administration area. You'll recall that that was one of the suggestions that came from the community. We're going to show you another option just because, we want you to know that there are choices. We have created the 6th grade wing here. One of the 6th grade wing has a nice collaboration space here, but the other sort of really interesting space, in addition to the core spaces, and in addition to the flex spaces of small group spaces and the planning offices, is what our industry has called a Da Vinci lab. Actually, that phrase has probably been coined by another architect, and I should give Fielding Nair credit for that. What that is that's a space that provides science instruction, allows for science instruction to go on, but also provides other types of activities. Art, perhaps, hands-on project making, those sorts of things. If you think about them, they have some things in common, and 6th grade science isn't probably as equipment specific as 7th and 8th grade science is. So that becomes a really dynamic space. It's immediately across from the collaboration area. There are the small group rooms like you have in the planning rooms. If you see a T, architects say toilets as opposed to bathrooms, just for clarification. And you see your other sets of spaces. So 6th grade has its own wing. 7th and 8th have their own wing. 7th is on one floor, 8th is on another. We really like this layout. What you have is you've got Team 1, Team 2, and what they do is the science areas share a science lab, which can be a really nice space. And then adjacent to the science lab is the hands-on maker space. And there are small group offices right here. So there can be some interesting sharing of space between the two if you'd like. There doesn't have to be. And what I really like is that the hands-on maker space is immediately adjacent to the collaboration areas. So if you're doing a really interesting and unique project, it can spill out into these areas. As is centrally located, I think it's really a really strong solution. And then you're also seeing an addition for the administration and the office areas here. So that's a brief overview of the plan for Concept A, Option A, and I'd like Steve now to talk about site plan and massing.
Yeah, on the back of that page, Option A is the site plan, and we'll put it up on the screen. Debbie, if you'd go to the next slide. For those of you that have been to the site before school, after school, you know it gets very congested there because there really isn't a clear separation of bus drop-off versus parent drop-off. So that's one of the key things we're wanting to solve in this, and we've been working with Benton Associates on looking at how that could be accomplished. And so if you look on the screen over here, this, in the light gray, is the existing building. The white shows the proposed additions for Option A, a gymnasium addition, the commons, info commons here, classroom addition, administration addition in white. And just to get you oriented, north is to the left. This is Lincoln Avenue, Hoagland Avenue, Morton's over to the right over here. And this is your current parking lot, current playground area. So one of our thoughts is to actually make an extension off of this street over here so that bus drop-off could occur through this. So everything in the dark gray is proposed new paving, basically. So this street, this entrance to the parking, additional parking in this drive. So bus drop-off could occur over here, drop-off at this entry, which dumps into this commons area. Bus traffic could exit on out. So keep bus drop-off traffic separated where parent drop-off would occur along this side of the building. One of the other things we'll explore in this, right now we're just showing an entry drive with visitor parking here so that you can get to the front entrance of the building and the administration right here in this main entrance. The other option we want to explore, depending on cost and the geography, that the contours and so forth, would be to actually extend this parent drop-off drive down along the side. So you maybe come in off Lincoln here, drive along the side to give more queuing space for parents to drop off at the front door, then they come and exit out onto Lincoln Avenue. And one of the things we discussed with Benton Associates was the idea of maybe relocating this entry in the parking lot so that it lines up directly across the existing street. Because right now those two are slightly offset. It makes for very confusing when people are entering and exiting from the side street or from the parking lot. So I think this sort of general solution you'll see in all three of these concepts. If you go to the next slide, Debbie, we'll kind of look at a simple preliminary massing model. The white represents the new additions. So in this, we're showing the classroom addition along Lincoln Avenue. This scheme as option B really allows a lot of curb appeal by changing that aesthetic along the primary elevation of the building. You can see the courtyard with the commons, info commons additions here in white, the gymnasium addition off to the north. So we'll jump on to Plan B, Option B. I'll take that.
Okay, option B has the same basic components that, you know, the solution was developed on. That is the flexible performance area, the flexible student commons, and the media resources information commons, all right here. It also includes the new gym for $750. So here's what's different. You'll note that we've left the special ed self-contained, all day long self-contained, in the same location that it currently exists. One of the reasons, and then we've moved music and chorus over here. One of the reasons that we did this is we heard some positive feedback about the location of special ed here, less distractions, but there is also a higher volume space in the cafeteria currently, and that'll work better for chorus. These are interchangeable. You could apply the concept, the special ed and fine arts concept to option that you saw in option A to option B and vice versa, just so that you know. All right, so here's the other thing that's different. You'll remember option B creates a 6th grade wing with the south addition. So this creates a new location. The south addition becomes the 6th grade wing. So the east wing becomes the location of all of the electives. We heard some positive feedback that creating electives all in one same area, since they're shared by all grades, might be a valuable thing. And in the electives wing, if you will, there is a small collaboration area plus a couple small group offices. The 6th grade wing, I think, is beautifully located here. This becomes, I don't want to sound dramatic, but it's more of a celebration for the 6th grade. There is a nice commons area outside that reminds me of a space that you've seen if you've seen Booker T. Washington Elementary School in Champaign. It's similar. They called that space a piazza. We probably shouldn't call it again because that was, again, a competing architect, but essentially this becomes a commons area that is an extension of your learning environment right here. I think this will be a very warm and welcoming location for 6th graders, which I think is very important as they transition from the elementary school grades to the middle school grades. Across this nice commons, grand commons, are the science areas, and I really like this as well. You'll see the science classrooms are on either side of the Da Vinci Lab. So the Da Vinci Lab can open up to the courtyard, and the courtyard can become an outdoor classroom. Kim, in our office, she's our resident landscape architecture layout person. She's done a very nice layout here that you haven't seen, but that you will see as this moves forward. One of the comments that we got is we want to make sure that the courtyard is really highly utilized, a highly effective space. And we've got no doubt that by locating this here, that will be true. This will be a very nice space. And so what you also see now is you see the same suite of 7 and 8 spaces where you've got Team 1 and Team 2, and they are joined by the common spaces of a special ed classroom as well as the science lab and the maker lab, both with access to the collaboration areas. Again, I think that's an extremely strong concept, and I think overall option B is an extremely strong solution to this design.
If you go to the next slide, and also on the back of that, option B is the site plan. A lot of similarities to option A, so I won't go into a lot of depth on there. The same general site circulation, which we think solves a lot of the congestion that you're facing before and after school. But you can see, again, the differences. There's a south addition and a west addition, of course, the gymnasium addition on the north. And if you go to the next slide, you can kind of, again, see the general massing of the building. So along with the strengths that this option has in the floor plan solution, we also think it offers some really strengths in terms of the curb appeal, because not only are you able to really give a new curb appeal facelift to the west elevation, but again to the south elevation, which again faces Morton Avenue. So as you're approaching the site from Morton, coming up Lincoln, that whole corner can really come off as basically a new school. And we will look at creative ways to tie the two additions together aesthetically. Obviously, we're showing everything white just so you can get a sense of massing, but this will be an integrated design that will look like it's always been there. Option C.
Thank you, Steve.
And then the north side on all of this.
The north,
is gonna have
Right.
two.
the north sides. Yep. Yeah, this is very similar to the approach at Eisenhower and MacArthur. All right, looking at option C, and again, remember, option C was the science wing addition to the south, a different approach. And so, like options A and B, it shares the same common characteristics of the flexible performance space, the flexible student commons, the information commons, the media center, and the new gym. That's common to all of them. It has the same fine arts configuration as option A, where all of the fine arts are configured in the same location, and special ed is adjacent to the administrative spaces. But remember, whether you decide you like the approach that is in A or C or B, either can be implemented with any of the designs. And then what's different about this now is the layout of the academic spaces. We've grouped all of the science areas into the south wing. So you'll see here are the science classrooms, and again, this is for grades 6 through 8. So you'll have a science lab, and the Da Vinci lab all located right here. And so this becomes the balance of the 6th grade classrooms, the east wing. The 7th and 8th grades are in the west wing. You'll note that there are fewer collaboration spaces, and there is much less renovation that goes on within the existing classroom wings.
If you flip that over, you'll see the site plan. Again, very similar layout, with the exception you can see the bulk of the additions occur at the south and at the north. There's really very little work along the east elevation. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see the massing. And again, you can see the bulk of the addition for the science wing on the south. The one downside of this option that we see is the fact that we're really doing very little to affect what we think is the primary elevation, which is the west elevation. So you can see basically this long stretch of your 7th, 8th grade wings is virtually untouched with the exception of the glazing and so forth. So the impact areas on that elevation are just at the far end down here where the science addition extends out, and then a small administrative addition. So again, that represents the massing for option C. We also have, Debbie, if you pull up, we got 2 images of this sort of commons area that we've been talking about, that I'll let Sam talk about, that sort of help you maybe visualize how this could work. Do you want to talk about this?
Sure. Okay, so you're looking at a picture as if the roof has been pulled off. And so here is the old gym. This is the footprint of the old gym right now. You know, this is the edge of the court, and there's the stage. So the stage will remain as it is. Again, we'll probably rebuild this, probably take it down to floor level, and you'll have fixed seating. Again, this is just a very rough 3D drawing to help you understand the concept. Then there will be telescoping theater seats, not bleachers like you'd see in a gym, but telescoping theater seats. They would essentially stack right here. And when they're opened, this creates a nice flexible performance venue for about 450 folks. When they, okay.
You might mention fixed seating would have a slope floor too, so that's
Yeah.
not a flat.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Steve. The fixed seating will have a slope. It will have what we call a rake on the floor, so that the sight lines are appropriate. So, you know, that's a fixed. When you're playing to a small venue, a small house, this becomes a really nice feeling space. When you need the bigger space, the slope will come from the telescoping seatings, but this, again, remains sloped. When that's in use, you see right here we have overhead doors. When that's in use, overhead doors will be closed, and this becomes an enclosed chamber. And then the student commons is essentially cut in half. Let's go to the next slide, please, Debbie. There should be another slide right after this. Another JPEG. And essentially what you're going to see is you're going to, there it is. Okay, so now we've got those doors shown as they're closed. This all opens up, and actually, yeah, there's only 3 columns, so this can be actually much less wall and much more open. You know, we can have it divided down to just the columns. But then this becomes the complete space that allows students to have lunch. This fits 250 to 275 folks. And in the event you needed 3 separate spaces, these can be separated off so that you've got, you know, the fixed seating here, a separate multi-purpose space here, and a separate student commons here when you're not serving lunch. The student commons will also be an extension of the information commons. This should have the feel, as the project design develops, should have the feel of a Starbucks or a Panera, so there is some extended seating out here, like some of the things that you saw, because this needs to be a really desirable place, again, reestablishing the importance of the media center as sort of the hub of the academic world. Yes, Steve?
So is there going to be any type of door or anything to shut down the media center?
Yes. Yeah, there'll be a separate door here.
Sliding panel?
It could be sliding panels, it can be an overhead grill. We have two buildings, the Knoxville High School and the Silvis Middle School, not the academic part. We're not talking about that. We're talking about these areas where we've actually done this. You can see it in use. And then the third, which is actually the most similar because it uses this exact concept, is being constructed right now at Meridian.
So will this be, since we're adding the 6th grade there, will this be a larger area for more computers and stuff? Or is it going to be about the same as we currently have, or will it be smaller?
Well, this actual area is going to be smaller because we've taken the assembly, the major, you know, there's a lot of seating area in your existing space, and we've combined it in here. We're not duplicating it again. We're going to let this make for a highly effective and utilized space. You know, one of the keys to making sure that we develop effective designs is to utilize space, develop a higher utilization of space.
I know like this room here, we've got computers everywhere.
Yeah.
There's still not enough.
Yeah.
So that was my concern, that we wouldn't have enough technical
Okay.
equipment.
Okay, that's actually a question that Beth asked. So what we have imagined here is two labs. You have labs. We imagine having labs in here. We haven't had that laid out. As you bring 6th grade, we know you'll at least need a third until the point where every room is a computer lab. And so the Da Vinci lab is a space that I think makes perfect sense as the additional technology space as you bring 6th grade in.
I got a couple more questions. I don't want to get too far away from where you're at, so I want to catch you back up to you over here.
Okay?
On your first, security's been a big issue, and the reason we talked about doing this, a lot of people I was hearing from, is this zones the building off, so if you've got a certain event going on, you only go into the zone. So over half your building will not be utilized and be able, like this building here, if we have something going on, soft or whatever, the building's kind of. Now, when you go back to your first slide where you're showing the parking lot for dropping off parents, dropping off kids and stuff, totally agree, no problem at all, one-lane traffic. My only concern was, have we talked to the emergency vehicle, fire department, police department, ambulance service? Do we need those parking spaces by our front door since we already got a massive parking lot to keep people farther?
You want to have visitor spots near your front door. Okay, well, that's not throughout the day.
Yeah.
You don't want to make
Just
them
be
walk
visitors,
all
yeah.
the way from the big parking lot to that weather rain.
Okay. But have we, just for their input, have we talked to our emergency services to see what they have to,
We will,
something podgy for us maybe?
as soon as,
I think they'll be involved with that. I'm trusting that they will design a building that will encompass
And now
emergency
the
services.
construction manager mentioned that specifically in their presentation, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
would suggest that as soon as we narrow in and say, hey, we want to pursue this
I got a big
idea.
question I gotta-
Go for it.
This is potentially a fly in the ointment of all.
Okay.
It's the numbers with the auditorium and the cafeteria.
Mhm.
For this to work and be effective, I'm the one that's seems to be the big push for the auditorium.
Mhm.
And I've worked in plenty of schools with an auditorium, and we use them all the time. It's not a question of what we'll use it for, you can figure out uses, but that seating, that permanent seating, right there with the cafeteria is 250, we've got to have lunch for 250, which is a great level. And then we've got to have the permanent seating for 250.
Okay.
For a grade level. And that's my problem with this. And I love the design. I love the thought in the period, but just the size-wise, I don't know if it's large enough. I don't know if it's large enough, thank you guys. I don't know if it's large enough for 150 to 175 to be utilized on a regular basis for the amount of presentations or discussions we want to have with the 6th grade class, the 7th grade class, the 8th grade class.
Jeff was just talking, he's been working a lot on that layout just yet today. It feels like it's potential we can get 250 on the floor fixed and 250 in the bleachers. So it's real possible we could get 500 in that space, 250 fixed on the floor.
And the 250 fixed on the floor, and this is what I'm talking up, is that throughout most of the day, we've got cafeteria, we've got to have this closed so we can use this and have this prepared for lunch. So those are going to be closed often. So you're saying you can get 250 into here, so at least I can get a grade level into the auditorium?
That's what we feel like we can do. We got to study that further. And
Okay.
then keep in mind that, there are doors over on each side here, so that is separated, so people can't
Oh.
just meander through there. But-
I was assuming that'll be sealed.
Yeah. Now, it's not above the bleachers, but everything down below. When it's opened all the way out, then it becomes a self-contained auditorium room. So our goal would be to try to do that, maximize the seating based on just preliminary layouts. It looks like that.
And this brings up an important point also. Our schematic design is due to be complete in a month. So these issues we have, if we've done a good job of really highlighting the big picture issues, we can really dive into issues just like this over the course of the next month.
Okay, because I just knew all the designs had that, and if that couldn't fit 250, it really, it would make the auditorium day-to-day not as functional as we needed it to be.
The other way would be
Okay.
to do freestyle seats like you did for first
Could
Christmas.
you not push that info comments out more to the courtyard and expand? that?
Well,
That was what I was thinking also, is that,
here's the challenge, and we are limited by the existing wall of the gym. Those columns, we would love to work within the constraints of that structure, because that will be much more cost-effective. So let us do some more detailed work on that.
I think, are you talking about,
Yeah,
if that's out a little bit?
yeah.
Well,
That doesn't help the auditorium.
yeah, the point is
Well, but
the,
it does from this.
oh,
That's out a bit, and we only need 500 in here, can't this come out a little bit?
you're going to need to this wall to get to 500, Steve.
Yeah. There's
Get to
three-
500 with what?
With the auditorium.
With the
There's
auditorium.
3 major columns that support the whole gym roof structure that are in that
I
wall.
wasn't talking about 500 for the auditorium, I was talking about a guaranteed 250 seating in the auditorium.
So you would be all right with 250, and then if there's only 200 in the back,
I
That would
would
be-
like 500 because 2 classes in there if it's pulled out. But the realistic thing is that during the day, there's not a whole lot of times during the day we're going to pull this out because lunch, Beth
Right.
and Holly, is going to be dominated in the middle of the day with this having to be open.
yeah.
So to use this functional during the day, we've got to have a minimum of 250 in here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now at night, or for events, oh yeah, we can pull that out and we don't have to worry about any of that. But if that required popping this out a little bit and just popping that in a little bit, just to get more permanent seating, is that kind of what you were?
That or even leaving that area for the seating and open it up when you're not using it, but extend this area out so that you can fit more people on this side of the wall.
The new addition expanded a little farther so you get there.
Move the doors.
And
Just move all those doors.
They can't move the doors because those are the columns. Those are the columns. They can't move the doors.
We can make that another 50, 100 feet deeper.
Well, the only thing we have to realize is those two language arts rooms, like on C right there, we also do not want to interfere with their natural lighting. So you cannot move that wall in so far that you're interfering with the natural light. You
Yeah,
agree with that?
absolutely. Not to mention that B is the biggest. They are all within the program budget, but A is smaller and C is smaller. You get the most with B, because
Okay.
it's right where it's our upper limit.
But so that's that. I just want to see if, I was just trying to think of other major concerns that could stop from, there's a lot of other good discussion, but these are some of the big. That was it. That was the only big thing that I saw that.
I had a couple more little ones here, just to kind of keep in the same frame of mind. I understand the special ed up front. I don't have a problem with that at all. And that answers one of the questions, is the special ed, one of the quotes in here, special ed was isolated back in the back. That way they would be up front and they would be more mainstream because they'd be where they
But something to keep in mind about the special ed at the back is that provided immediate bus drop-off into those special ed classes without interfering with parent drop-off, which is what's going to happen up front.
Okay, that's not a problem. I just noticed that. I noticed that you reconfigured where the special ed class is from 6th grade to 7th grade. On the 8th grade, is there a special ed
Yes.
class up there?
Yeah, the west wing of the 7th grade is just replicated upstairs. Well,
Okay.
not entirely. There's a couple classrooms further to the north on the second floor than there is, but the same spaces exist on the second
I got two
floor.
more short things. One is the elevator. I understand we need it. I agree with it. Is it going to be big enough to take a stretcher? I know that law hasn't been in effect, but it's been talked about. And if it was big enough to take a stretcher, does that make it easier for our maintenance guys to get the furniture and equipment and stuff they need upstairs?
Yeah, I think we maybe talked about this briefly Monday night, and it's something we saw in our tours up in Des Plaines with District 62. And John, that's one of his recommendations. The facilities guy up there said, for an extra $20,000 or so, you can upgrade from a standard 2,500-pound elevator to a 3,500-pound, which would allow you to put a stretcher in there if there was ever an emergency, you had to bring a kid down or a teacher from the second floor. But the elevator doesn't get used hardly ever. But he said the nice thing is if you're moving furniture up and down, the maintenance staff can use that larger elevator. If it prevents one workman's comp claim, it's paid for itself.
Because it was, what does he say? Is it the lift or the trolley, or what is it that he say fits in there?
Yeah, I mean,
That's
you
mechanical.
you can usually get, larger furniture, move a trolley in there, not have to go up the stair or try to pack this in small. So it's one of the things that I think we definitely try to make fit in there. It's a small upcharge, but I think based on everything we've heard, and if you agree, that might make sense to
Last
upgrade.
trivial thing. Courtyard. So to take care of the courtyard and maintenance and maintain it, we still got to drive the lawnmower through the building?
Yeah, one of the things we talked about this a little bit with Craig Castleberg, because I know that's one of his big concerns too, is somewhere in this plan, our thought is we would create an actual storage room where there would be a mower, maybe a push mower, preserved in that area, so it's not brought in and out of the building. Where obviously, it's not going to all be grass, there's going to be a combination of concrete walks, some maybe rock landscaping, so minimize the amount of grass, and there'll still be some, I think, just to soften this space up, but ideally create a space where a mower would be housed, so we're not driving it through the building like you currently
So
have to
the whole
do.
courtyard will be able to be utilized?
Right, and this storage room would be right off the courtyard. That's our
mower.
thinking on that.
Thank you.
Give them a real mower to mow
real
what lawn.
mower.
My question is on that entire north half of the building,
Yes.
the only restrooms that we see are in the locker rooms.
Yeah.
So there's really no public restrooms for events or anything like that.
Can we go back to option B in the floor plan, Debbie? A couple thoughts here, and again, this is at a very high concept level and has to be yet refined. Could you go to the floor plan of option B? I mean, and this is true of really,
There you go. Right there. Yep.
of really all of them, or even maybe go to option A, actually might even reflect that a little better. One of the things, obviously we have to provide adjacent toilets for this whole commons auditorium space. which we've provided those over here near this entry point, because we felt it was more important to have the kitchen directly adjacent to the commons, have the toilets that serve that here. But, our other thought is, with this gymnasium space, one option is, of course, they come down this corridor and utilize this set of toilets here. Or we look at carving in another small bank of toilets into this corner that becomes more adjacent to the gymnasium, because right now we're showing a lot of square footage, depending, again, whether special ed goes on the west side or the east side, that I think there's the ability to carve in some toilets there. But that's definitely something I think that would benefit the use of the space, because, like Steve was mentioning earlier, Cantrell, that we can actually secure off the building here and here. The whole academic wing could be secured off if you have a performance going on or a gymnasium event. That whole side of the building could be accessed without having people wander around the academic wings, which I think would be a nice sort of separation.
Kind of cages down, or those in there.
Yeah, or even doors on those could be actually the locked doors, so
yeah.
that they have egress out of this classroom wings, but they're locked for entrance after hours. They're on hold opens during the day.
I was going to say, and even going further there with option C, the amount of restrooms in option C has been drastically reduced as well, it looks like.
I noticed on here, the commons area, that will be extended up the height of the auditorium roof, according, is it showing? it?
Yeah, the commons area is going to get a new roof. It's essentially going to be built, taken down and built again, like we did at Eisenhower.
That'll give you a lot of.
Yeah, a lot of volume. It's going to be, that's going to be a great space for students, a great showcase for the district.
And does that upper part, will that have a windows, so it'll be a daylight open area?
Yeah, probably a clear story, because you've got what I mean by a clear story is windows above the adjacent roof of the information commons, because we want to get natural daylight into that space.
Kind of shows up in the massing. You can see sort of the massing in that option. It allows the higher windows above the information commons into that central collaboration commons.
Thank you.
Your question about the restrooms in option C, if we flip over to that plan, it's not as maybe obvious.
Well, we have it in the new edition there, but then it also removes, that replaces the ones in the 7th and 8th grade wing, but it also removes the one, if you look at Plan B, that are currently there in the elective wing. So,
In option C, are you talking about?
Well, option C, yeah. Option C has the one on the east side and basically one on the
Right.
southwest corner.
Correct. Yeah, there's one less bank of toilets than option B there.
I'm sure that all of that can be accounted for later. Couple other questions. The existing facade on the building, we keep talking about the pop that the new construction is going to
Right.
provide. We're not going to be left with just the yellow brick that's there on the existing.
No, there are a number of architectural design strategies that we can use to create, sometimes it's nice to create a rhythm between old and new that gives it all a unified look, but it's an updated look. And so between now and July, what we'll do is we'll show you various exterior expressions. I have to say, option B is the option that is most easily reinvented, creates a new identity. It will be tougher with option C, and it will be tougher with option A.
Keep in mind, we're not talking about, we're not going to be able to afford stripping all the brick off the building and
Right.
cladding. But where we do those additions to complement it and tie together, and make that actually blend in well.
And am I correct in one of the things that I know there's a lot of discussion about toilets and a lot of this type of stuff, but that's really not to the level we're at right now. are we?
Right.
Yes.
Okay, let's get to the level we're at. We're talking about the basic general floor plan designs, and I don't want us to get caught up in the time we've got. It's already 6:46
Right.
in the minutia in the different options. If we're going to go forward and make a vote on one of these options tonight, would you as architects recommend, we're talking about the major scale issues,
Yes.
correct? All the other small things, we can put them down as a list, and when we get to the design process, talk about ways to tweak it.
Yes, and we have a recommendation if you'd like it.
Okay, but let's, it's 6:46 and we're not to the point of really talking about the differences between these three big picture items and which one you guys are really interested in. With any other major questions? that-
Well, the one thing I see missing, which can be probably accounted for later on, is staff lounge. Is that
It is.
taken account for in the administrative area?
It's a really nicely timed question. Rachel is handing out what's called the building program, and this is the list of spaces that this is a draft. This is subject to scrutiny by the Turner staff and the superintendent, the administration, and you as well. But this gives you an idea of all the spaces that are programmed to be part of this facility.
And yes, that workroom and staff lounge would all be part of that administrative board.
The office areas.
So that's what we envision.
So you can see on the front page all of the specific spaces that comprise that one block on the plan called administration.
Because the type of conversation I think we need to be having is something such as, are we interested with the sixth grade wing being at the back side as an option B? Are we interested with the science department being pulled out and being separate as one of the other options? These are the big picture type discussions that I think that's the stage we're at right now.
Yes.
So let's look at it from that scale. The major differences between A, B, and C, let's focus on those differences. Anybody?
Does that, I guess my biggest question.
Steve, can you use the mic, please?
Does that give us enough classroom space, enough classrooms to match up with how many classrooms we're currently using to the district?
We are working with Beth and Holly to go through that process. In all of these, that's a question. So, once again, what's the major differences between A, B, and C? Can we focus on those? That's where we need to start.
I like option B because of the addition to the front of the school. And I also like the addition, heck, I'm no good with directions.
The south.
That, thank you. I like the configuration of that addition on the south.
You know, do we have a whiteboard or something like that, an easel or something like that? I think it would be really good. I should have thought about this early, because Shirley just brought up that's a core big difference, and I want to start listing these things as to what's the difference between A, B, and C. And I'm going to start writing that down, because that's... So you like the massive change in the outside image, correct, Cheryl?
Yes, I like the addition to the front. I mean, I know A has it also, but I also like the addition on the south side.
Okay.
Is any one of these, is all these within our budget area?
Yes, I said that earlier.
Every one of them.
Which one is the most cost effective?
A is the smallest and therefore the most cost effective.
I thought when we were together Monday night that one of them, or that Table A gathered, was that it was out of our price range.
Yes.
Three of them were out of our price range.
Yeah, what we presented Monday night was one which we called the baseline, which means what we could get within our budget, area budget. And the other three were ideal programs with the big picture differences. One had a sixth wing addition to the south, the other had a science wing. And so what we did is we took the input of Monday night and boiled them all down to the baseline or lower.
Okay.
So they're all within the programmed area. And so now you can see how each one of those translates with the input that we got on Monday night.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And B and C, either one of those, moving the students around, if you finish the south end, you can move the 7th grade over there, or the 8th grade.
That's a bit,
It really is.
B and C allow for an easier transition.
Yeah,
They do.
you build that
Okay.
addition, move one of the grades in there, and now it frees up a lot more space for renovation before you bring 6th grade over. So
Then that way they,
Great point.
we're in option A, that becomes much more complicated.
Which could then make it more costly, which could override the efficiency of the size.
Right.
correct?
Or make the savings smaller.
Smaller, make the
Yep.
savings smaller.
Yes.
And the advantage, I'm sorry.
And get in the way of the timing, if it's, yeah.
As I mentioned earlier, option C really doesn't do a lot to west elevation, where B does both west and south. That's one of the differences to keep in mind as well.
I really, when we did the other night, we had a discussion with a couple of us that really liked C, but is it really beneficial to the students to just put our whole science part all in one section? Is that a bigger advantage in the
Let me address that.
In the future.
Let me address that. It is a debate that you're going to have wins and losses on either side. I have been in high schools that are departmentalized, and I've been in high schools that are integrated. There's weaknesses and strengths both ways. If you're in a department where you're working around all other science teachers, then your collaboration amongst your science department absolutely increases. But your interaction with your peers that are outside of your department decreases. When you're working and you're integrated, it's vice versa. Some of the advantages you get by that science department being together might be costs in that example because of science labs, less science laboratory need because you have instructional spaces that are less costly. So really, I can't say one's absolutely more beneficial than the other from the educational standpoint.
I like the concept of it because the collaboration is they're right next to them, they can do more things together at one time, especially if I understand it, that the science, if it's in the science area, you can open up 2 walls and they can be 3 classes together, collaborating together, or is that solid walls? In the science in C?
But let's get back to the big
Okay.
picture things. That could happen in a lot of different buildings right there. That's not a big picture issue.
But is one of our goals to still segregate the 6th grade from the 7th and 8th? Because option C
Does
takes that away as far as the science is concerned.
So I'm going to put a question mark by C.
she's doing, yeah.
Thank you, Jill. C is, I'm going to put a question mark whether it's an advantage or not, but it is definitely science is departmentalized. Correct?
Yes.
Then you don't have your 6th graders in one unit and your 7th, your 8th.
But even in B, don't we have the electives that are departmentalized by elective?
Yes.
So so they would be leaving for their electives anyway. It's just that in B, C, science departmentalized, B, electives are departmentalized.
Yes.
And they're going to be leaving for any fine arts regardless of whether A, B, or C.
Correct. Correct. And fine arts are departmentalized in every one of these.
And C is putting some elective space into the courtyard, is that looking right?
It's in the existing media center.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of what we got going right there.
Miss Curriculum?
I was going to say, negative on the C is
Sarah?
the...
I need I think the board needs to hear your input on this.
C doesn't do anything for the west elevation, west facade.
No, just a negative.
Can you hear me? I think, I told Bill to always keep me on mute,
And then
so.
no change to the west.
Here.
Personally, I like B just because I think it allows you to allow for that elective piece to happen, you know, if the students want to move throughout that, but it's not, I don't know. I like having the science within the department, within that team. I think
Within the
that's
team,
important.
not within the
team.
department.
With-
Within the
Yeah,
team.
not separated. But, you know, there are pros and cons, like Steve said, and we discussed it a lot with the teachers, and, you know, there's a lot of difference in opinion on that. But I do like having that 6th grade. I like having that part on the south, where that they would have that wing. I like having the electives all together. I don't know, B is my favorite option. I think it allows us to do more with the building and not be stuck. Like, if we do C, we're never going back from that. You know, the science will always be there because you're not going to move those labs around.
But you could say on the counter the same thing about B. You're
You
never
could
going
say
to
that,
that.
yes.
So
Yeah.
it is a decision we're making.
It is permanent.
Right. So the question is, what do you think the community would rather have? As representatives of the community?
It's within the budget.
Yeah, if it's within the budget.
Well, they're both within the budget, so that's not the issue. The issue is,
The wild
do you think the
factor would
community?
be-
No, I'm talking about the science departmentalized
Well,
versus.
you know, for
versus
years, on several
more
committees
traditional.
I've been on, I've heard parents come to committees and say that we don't do enough for our science. When their kids got to college, they weren't getting enough. So if I go by what I'm hearing there, C is the option. Because we're not.
B doesn't take away from that, though.
No.
B doesn't take away from that.
No, but I mean, that
don't.
puts more alignment, puts more into it.
Makes the statement that that is a science-based bill. I mean, okay, I see that that there's a focus, that it's.
And that was a big issue,
Okay.
even in the high school, that they said that, we didn't get enough, and they didn't get anything in junior high, and our science has been behind for years in junior high because we didn't have enough to work with.
Is our south addition 2 stories on both these?
One
Just one?
One story.
No problem.
Now, is there a way to do a hybrid of B and C? To have that, I'm not saying I'm advocating for this, but just to know as an option D, that has that science in the back, but still gives the change in the facade on the west.
Steve's
don't think
whispering in my ear, he doesn't think so.
Okay.
And
that's
I
a
think
cost.
Probably the safest answer, to be
Okay.
candid.
It's things, a question I had to ask, but that's a cost restriction, okay?
$20 more would be better.
I think B provides more collaborative space for the teams than C does. I mean, C has the great spaces for the science and everything, and a larger space for 6th grade, but the 7th and 8th grade collaborative space is relatively small. Now, I mean, if this is to scale, maybe or maybe not, but
Are there collaboration spaces missing on C because you didn't have room to type it in? Because it looks like just a little bit narrower hall there.
No, they're accurate as shown.
And they're to scale.
Yeah, they're to
It's just
scale.
you're putting, on C, there's more square footage going into the science wing, so it really limits what you can do in the other existing classroom wings. Therefore, only one collaboration space in the 7th and 8th grade wings versus 2 in option B. It's just a trade, it's just one of the other trade-offs.
And so the collaboration spaces are on the second floor too?
Yes.
I'll refer to that line.
Yes.
Everything you see is
That
mimicked.
wing's exactly the same up
Mimicked.
top on every diagram we've got. Now, one thing I do like about B, if we look, is you see the planning across from the collaboration space. That would be something that would have the glass windows that we were showing you on Monday night. Therefore, that you would have, correct?
Yes.
Therefore, you would have passive observation of the students.
Yes.
I mean, it's just, so I'm getting this, nobody's talking about A. We've knocked that out.
Yes.
A's done.
A's done.
If you've been in the same ballpark, it's gone.
I like B.
Well, if you look at the list so far,
Kind of obvious.
B
Kinda
seems
looks
to
like
have
B.
more cons or pros than.
And of course, once again, with B, we're not talking about things like whether the special ed's in the north or in the east or the
Right.
west. Those are the things we'll adjust going forward, major picture. Do we take a straw? Of course, this is a committee of the whole about that.
Yes.
The hallways.
Debbie,
stay
we'll
the
start
same
with you.
width, right? They don't expand the same.
oh, B would be my choice.
Okay.
I'm B.
Do you want to talk about what we talked about Monday night on B? And maybe that would be a decision later.
Different scenarios.
Yeah, remember the B here doesn't match up to the B Monday night.
I think what we were talking about,
But
though.
the point does, though. is
Yeah.
Oh,
relevant.
okay.
Yeah.
Hey, can we stop a second and hear
Sure.
their recommendation before we say what we want? Before we take the
I want to
straw
hear the
poll?
recommendation, but I want to hear what she says too, just to see if the recommendation changes.
The only thing I'd say about that is that I think the board should have its own recommendation. It's your call. I mean, I know the architect.
Well, that's
but
true, but they're the experts and I'm not.
They're not necessarily
so-
the experts in what we want our building to be facilitating with our community and our staff.
Well, but I'd still like to hear from
Okay.
them.
Yeah.
I mean,
Doesn't mean we have to agree with them, but we want to hear what they have to say.
Libby, what was your point?
Go for it.
The choir and band, so on B, and maybe you already, did you already move it?
Changed it.
Because when we looked at it, is that where it was originally on B?
These are
Choir and
different.
music?
No, B, yeah, that's why I said the B from Monday night
Yeah, C.
has no correlation to B here.
Now it's-
Because B Monday night had it down in the existing media center.
And the rooms.
And like Steve said, the rooms can be changed.
Yeah, the rooms can be changed.
Yeah, and that's why I
and
wondered
your
if that was a
concept was-
question for later.
Yeah.
Because we had a good discussion about that.
Because your band will should still be next to
In one of the scenarios,
Correct.
Monday night, the choir and the band were all the way on the
They
back
were.
side of the building.
They
And
were.
one of the points made with that is that, why do we want to have them so far away from the auditorium?
Yeah.
If that was the question you guys were talking about, then yes, that's been taken care of in
Okay.
all these scenarios.
Okay.
And here-
But I remember that discussion
and B
Monday
right
night.
here.
Yeah, okay.
I think we've gone around, so I think it should finish at this point in time. I mean, I think everybody's, and then,
Hear what they have to say, and I work.
well, we've gone all the way around. I
No.
said B, she said B.
3 of us haven't voted yet.
Okay.
Sam, what's your recommendation?
We like option B. We think it creates a really nice place for sixth grade, which I think is really important. You're changing how you handle students. I think A and B both do a really nice grade with 7th and 8th grade. I get C, and that's compelling. But I think when you look at all of this, you look at the ability of the design to, impact your community with curb appeal, with wow. B has the most of everything.
Okay.
The other
We'll go
thing
with a
that-
vote then.
sorry.
Go vote.
Well, we'll start off good. I agree, B.
Libby?
Yeah, I don't see a lot of difference between, other than what we've talked about on the,
Right.
the new addition. I definitely like the new addition and the wow factor. I wondered, is there anybody here that teaches science? And the only reason I say we had a good discussion again Monday night, there was a girl at our table that went to school at Turner, and she felt very strongly about C because of the science. And she said it was easier to share equipment, it was all there, and it could be state-of-the-art. She had a bad experience.
But the equipment's going to be the same regardless of whether it's all together or whether it's,
I'm just stating my,
I know
you
that,
asked for
but-
my opinion, I'm
but
giving
is-
you my
Is there anybody
opinion.
here that's taught science?
Yes?
I guess, whatever is your question about the facility?
Where it's all together on the one end, is that a big plus? Is it, what are your
6th,
thoughts
7th,
on
and 8th
that?
would be together as one department.
In terms of having
All the grades together in that
all the
science
grades
wing,
together that can share equipment,
Uh-huh.
you're going to reduce your equipment costs
by doing that?
by doing that. So if you have a common storage, a common place where everybody can go, get that equipment and bring it forward, as opposed to supplying each classroom or each area with that equipment, that's going to save money in that equipment. Is that comparable to the overall budget of a building? In the long run, it's significant. And I think it improves your collaboration. It improves your communication about how that equipment, how that budget is going forward as departments. and
That's a good
making
point.
decisions.
But the counter to that is that if we're doing a teaming concept, we're having a team of teachers that are all across department, it erodes that. So that's what I'm saying.
Right, and
You're
if-
going to get people who are very passionate about it, and they're going to get very people on the other side extremely passionate the other way. And I've been a science teacher in schools both ways. There's strengths and weaknesses.
There would still be some sharing if you look at B. I mean, you still have your 2 science rooms, and they're sharing 1 lab, so they're going to be sharing that equipment for that department. Same thing, with the Da Vinci lab is in the middle. They're going to be sharing things there. So we're not taking that completely away, or we'd have 6 separate, but
You're still supplying
there's-
3 labs
there's-
regardless.
a little bit.
The curriculum is going to determine the quality of your science education.
No pressure.
Excellent answer, Scott.
Thanks a lot, Scott. You can sit down now.
Steve, both points.
Cheryl, did we get Cheryl's vote yet? I'm not sure we got Libby's vote.
Can we hear from the lady in the back? She had her arm up.
You had something you want to say?
Oh, okay.
What, Beth, what's your thought?
And I think that in terms of the science situation, well, again, there are pros and cons to both of these. And I think that having that central lab between the two science classrooms, whether it's all in one area or it's a B, I think that's still going to serve us very well. You know, if there's specialized equipment, you know, we need or whatever, well, there's nothing that includes those 7th grade classes. We're going to use the 8th grade lab.
Right.
Too. So, you know, it's not like you have to have everything in both labs, for 7th and 8th grade, which is good. So I think you were pointing out I think that I was with Holly and I think we do like the options that he provides services.
And I was speaking to you earlier, Holly, in our conversation, you kind of like that elective space with all those elective classes together?
This gives us a little bit of opportunity for growth, whereas some of the other ones are very limited in
Okay.
that area. And there are some possibilities in our population to really stay necessarily, I mean, within or other classrooms.
So which one did she say?
B. They're both B. Okay.
And then I just have one last question, because I was late. What's the difference between the entry on B and C?
Okay.
Because Monday night, we liked it seemed to have added security where people were coming in.
Right. All of them are going to have a new security approach system, whether it's where we have the interior vestibule locked and they have to go into the office, or some other similar approach. But every single approach is going to have enhanced security. What C has, in addition to the administration area, whereas B has an addition that is maybe that secure vestibule and a canopy. It's an addition that would create like a new signage entry. Think Eisenhower, but on a smaller scale, and a scale appropriate for this. So that's the difference. There's some administration spaces. There's a little more administration spaces added in C than in B, but that's because B can reuse more of the cafeteria than C can.
And that's because of where you put the
Yes.
special ed. So that could adjust on either one of those.
Yes, it's absolutely.
So you could end up with B with C's front entrance and
Yes.
C with B's front entrance, based upon where you put the special ed classes in the choir.
in the fine arts, yes.
And the one you had Monday night, you had one coming from the parking lot straight in, instead of coming from Lincoln Street, is what you were talking about. It was coming from, all these are showing using Lincoln Street as an entrance from Main.
Yeah, are you talking about?
It is their entrance. Yeah, and the parent drop-off will be on the east,
Yeah,
on the west
it was
side.
coming in.
All of these are on the west side.
And let me address that. A lot of people wanted that parent drop-off to be all the way, because they don't want people to walk along the whole front, which we agree. That's why you're creating that extra road with the visitor spots right there next to it. The advantage of having the secure entrance here in the center is now it allows our administrative offices to be in the center, which with the glass windows allows the administrative office to be closer to the students, more visible presence in the commons, more visible presence with everything, correct? And that is a much better place to have the administrative office center. Holly, Beth, I think you would agree with that, all the way up to one end.
Very important.
Yes.
Puts the office where the action is.
That's good, puts the office where the action is.
Did you vote?
I'm fine with B or C. Looking at the list of pros, I'd say B, based on our discussion.
B is my choice too.
You got almost unanimous.
I think that was.
I was gonna say almost was.
I actually didn't vote, B. Not a vote, just input from your superintendent recommendation.
I think we're doing this more for direction for you to
Yes.
proceed rather than a formal vote.
Can I give you the next
Correct.
steps? Can I give you the next steps then?
Sure.
What we'll do is we'll go and start zeroing in on some of the finer details, like seating in the flexible space. and coming up with more specifics on the exterior expression. We are scheduled to present a schematic design that is within budget to you for approval at your July board meeting. What we'll do here is we'll give this to the construction manager when they're brought on board, and they'll start their cost estimating. And then they'll come back and they'll tell us we're over here, and we'll revise back and forth till we come as a team and present our collective recommendation. But you're going to have much more of the artist renderings between now and July.
All right.
Exciting.
Okay, at this time we'll adjourn the committee of the whole.